Everyone feared the millionaire CEO until the new secretary made him freeze. Before we dive in, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Type your city in the comments so we can see just how far this story reaches. And when we get to the end, I dare you to rate it from 0 to 10, because this one might just break your heart. Now, enjoy the story. The first day, Riley Parker walked into Crawford Enterprises. The marble lobby gleamed under the morning light, and the eyes of dozens of employees seemed to track her every move. And then it happened. Her heel slipped. 2 steaming cups of coffee lifted into the air, spinning in what felt like slow motion, before crashing down on a charcoal Italian suit worth well over $1,000. That suit belonged to Maxwell Crawford, the millionaire CEO, whose mere presence could make the air in any room feel heavier, cold, impossibly intimidating. The entire lobby froze. 1 second. 2, Riley's heartbeat thundered in her ears, bracing for the inevitable. But instead of mumbling an embarrassed apology, she lifted her chin, lips trembling, but eyes locked on his. "Well," she said softly, "at least now you smell like premium latte." It was the kind of reckless honesty no one had ever dared with him. And it was the moment everything began to change. Monday morning, sunlight poured through the towering glass panels of Crawford Enterprises, reflecting off the marble floors like a giant mirror. The place reeked of sophistication, controlled, calculated, and suffocating. Every footstep had purpose. Every glance carried weight. Riley Parker, 27, a brand new secretary still finding her footing in the corporate world, hurried across the lobby with a folder tucked under one arm and a tray balanced carefully in the other. 2 coffees, one for her, one for the CEO she'd never met in person, but had heard enough stories about to know. Crossing him was professional suicide. The click of her heels echoed across the lobby. Then, a single distracted moment. Her heel slid, the tray tilted, and at that exact second, a tall, commanding figure stepped out of the elevator. Tailored charcoal suit, broad shoulders, the kind of presence that made the air shift. Maxwell Crawford. The coffees arced through the air, painting a perfect circle before landing dead center on his pristine white shirt and silk tie. Silence swallowed the room. Riley's breath caught in her throat. She'd imagined a dozen nightmare scenarios for her first encounter with him, but none as bad as this. Maxwell looked down at the spreading stain, then up at her. His eyes were sharp enough to cut glass. 10 minutes, my office. He turned without another word, leaving her standing in the middle of the marble lobby, the weight of every stare pressing in. And the only question pounding through her mind, the same one you're probably asking right now, was, why hadn't she been fired yet? Part 1. A battle of wits before the investors. Monday morning, on the 30th floor of Crawford Enterprises, felt like stepping into another world. Floor-to-ceiling glass revealed the city skyline in sharp detail. A polished walnut conference table stretched the length of the room, and sleek black leather chairs stood in perfect formation. On the table, every glass of water was placed with mathematical precision. The air was thick with the scent of rich espresso, expensive cologne, and the unspoken pressure of the numbers flashing on the massive wall screen. Riley Parker stood just outside the door, clutching a stack of reports to her chest. On her very first day, she'd christened her new position by spilling coffee all over Maxwell Crawford. And now, less than 24 hours later, she had received a 5-word message from Jennifer, the CEO's longtime assistant. Bring the documents to the boardroom. Inside, Maxwell stood at the head of the table. His navy suit was cut to perfection, shoulders broad and commanding. A silver gray tie knotted with precision. Every move radiated control. His voice was low and steady, the kind that didn't invite debate, Ladies and gentlemen, our first quarter showed a 15% growth across all major sectors. That's why we're confident in expanding our market share this year. Riley stepped forward and placed the reports in front of him. But as her eyes flicked to the numbers on the screen, a chill ran down her spine. They were wrong, not a typo. She'd triple-checked the original reports. The real figure was 12, 3%, not 15%. Her heart pounded. Speaking up could very well be career suicide. Staying silent would mean betraying everything she believed about integrity. The glow from the screen lit her face as she made her choice. She took one deliberate step forward. "Excuse me, may I say something?" The room went still. Maxwell turned his head, his gaze like a blade, silently asking, "Did you really just interrupt me?" His voice was calm, but edged with steel. "Parker, are you correcting my numbers?" She swallowed hard, but her voice didn't waver. "Not correcting, setting them right. Actual growth was 12, 3%, not 15%. A soft murmur rippled around the table. The investors, so used to Maxwell's flawless presentations, began exchanging glances. Margaret Chen, one of the most seasoned investors, leaned forward. "Are you certain, Miss Parker?" Riley opened the file, revealing the spreadsheets she'd reviewed late into the night, color-coded columns, precise annotations, and highlighted discrepancies. "I've checked 3 times. The error comes from a decimal in Q3. Added up, it inflates the total by nearly 3%. 12.3 is still an outstanding result, but it's the truth." Maxwell didn't move, but his fingers tightened slightly on the table. Never, not once, had an employee interrupted him in front of investors, and certainly not a brand new secretary who drenched him in coffee the day before. Yet, instead of cutting her off, he folded his arms and studied her like a puzzle worth solving. Their eyes locked. Not CEO and secretary, but 2 people meeting on the battlefield of truth. Thomas Hartwell, a silver-haired investor with gold-rimmed glasses, chuckled under his breath. "Crawford, I can't recall the last time one of your assistants had the guts to correct you in front of us." Margaret Chen nodded approvingly. "I like it. Makes me trust the company's transparency." Maxwell gave a slight motion for Riley to continue. She drew a breath and flipped to the next page. "Here's a breakdown by department. With the 3% figure and internal factors combined, expansion is still viable, actually safer, because it's not built on inflated data." She spoke with the steady confidence of a lecturer, not someone standing before a table full of millionaires. Her tone carried no defiance, only the conviction of someone protecting what was right. And for the first time, Maxwell saw it. Beneath her quick wit from yesterday was a spine of steel, the kind that didn't bend under pressure. When the investors finally left, the room was quiet. Maxwell stood by the window, loosening his tie. His voice was lower now, almost thoughtful. "You do realize, if you'd been wrong, the damage would have cost me more than you could imagine." Riley closed the file, keeping her back straight. "But I wasn't wrong. And you know they didn't stay because of the 3%. They stayed because they trust you." He turned, his gaze cutting through her. "You're good, but reckless." She smiled faintly, half serious, half teasing. "Did you hire me to make coffee? Or to work?" A pause, then the faintest curve at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but far from the ice he was known for. And in that moment, Maxwell realized something. For the first time in years, someone had stepped across the invisible line of his authority to stand at his side. Part 2, Operation Smile. By Wednesday morning, the Crawford Enterprises Tower still loomed tall over the bustling business district. But as employees stepped off the elevators onto their floor, something unusual caught their attention. It wasn't the thin, bitter scent of industrial coffee they were used to. It was butter, cinnamon, warm vanilla. The air was rich with the kind of smells that could pull a smile out of even the most sleep-deprived executive. From the company kitchen came soft laughter and the quiet rustle of wrapping paper. Riley Parker had been up since 4 a.m. Wearing a simple work dress, she was setting out neatly packed boxes, golden waffles, blueberry muffins, buttery croissants, all fresh from a tiny bakery down the street. Next to each pastry sat a cup of cappuccino or latte and a handwritten note. "Thanks for keeping the project on schedule. You saved me yesterday by finding that file. Grateful for your dedication. Nobody makes ginger tea like you do." Each line was a real observation, never a hollow compliment. And for the first time in a long time, employees who usually arrived quietly, heads down, found themselves smiling, genuinely smiling because someone had noticed them. At 8:50, Maxwell Crawford stepped out of his private elevator. He was used to starting his mornings to the sound of ringing phones and clacking keyboards, not laughter. From down the hallway, he saw a cluster of employees gathered together, coffee and pastries in hand. Some were taking pictures, others were reading their notes aloud. The atmosphere was different, softer, lighter. He walked toward the kitchen, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Riley. She was fastening the last note to a pastry box, hair pulled back, but with a few strands falling loose against her face. She hadn't noticed him, too focused on arranging things like it was the most important job in the world. "Parker, what is this?" His voice cut through the warm chatter. The room fell silent. Riley looked up and smiled. Operation Smile. Goal for today: 100% smiles before 9 a.m. He frowned. "And the budget?" She shrugged lightly. "Out of my own pocket. Consider it an investment in team morale." "The returns?" "You can't measure in a spreadsheet." Something in his expression shifted just slightly. It had been a long time since anyone talked about team spirit without tying it directly to profit margins. Before he could walk away, Olivia from the design department spoke up. "Riley, that note you gave me, it almost made me cry." No one noticed. "I've worked late 3 nights in a row except you." A rumpled-haired IT engineer chimed in. "This croissant's better than the one from Main Street. And thanks for reminding me to stay hydrated." Laughter and thank yous rippled through the room. Each person lingered a moment longer before heading back to work, as if they were carrying something more than caffeine, like a small dose of encouragement to get through the day. Maxwell stood there, listening. In his memory, this company had always been about titles and KPIs, not the small human details. And yet, this morning, a few scraps of paper had done what hours of strategy meetings never could: connected people. For a split second, he thought of a 10-year-old boy himself who had once wished his busy parents would leave just one note behind, a reminder that they'd noticed him. By late morning, he called Riley into his office. The glass doors shut, muffling the outside world. "Parker, I didn't hire you to hand out pastries, right?" His tone was measured, his eyes unreadable. "She didn't flinch. I know, but when a day starts off badly, projects tend to follow. I just wanted to lift the room a little." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a sleek, black VIP company card. "Next time, use this. Don't pay out of pocket." Riley blinked in surprise, then grinned. "You're sponsoring Operation Smile." The corner of his mouth lifted barely, but it was there. "Consider it a long-term investment." "And, Parker, this morning, I saw a few investors walking by. They were smiling too." Riley left the office with the card in her hand, realizing the wall around Maxwell had shifted just enough for a sliver of light to slip through. Part 3. The Mole. Over Manhattan, the late afternoon sky hung heavy with gray clouds, as if the entire city were bracing for a storm. On the 30th floor of Crawford Enterprises, the CEO's office door was shut tight, sealing away any curious glances. Maxwell leaned against the edge of his desk, one hand in his pocket, eyes fixed on the electronic board glowing on the wall. Across from him, Riley sat with her laptop open, dozens of financial reports lined up in separate tabs. The tension in the room felt like a drawn bowstring. "Parker," his voice was low, deliberate, "this isn't your job. But I need a pair of eyes that can't be bought." She glanced at him briefly, then returned her focus to the screen. Among hundreds of transactions, one name stood out: Hartman and Associates. The amounts were just large enough to be significant, yet small enough to avoid triggering automatic alerts. And the date? 2 days before Crawford Enterprises signed $1 billion deal with a tech giant. She remembered the look in Maxwell's eyes yesterday when he'd said, "I don't trust everyone in that boardroom." For the first time, she understood that the trust he was giving her was something she could not afford to break. One by one, Riley opened each transaction. A pattern emerged every time the company was on the verge of a major contract. Hartman and Associates would quietly buy Crawford stock in precise quantities, enough to stay under the radar, but enough to make millions in profit each time. Coincidence? Maxwell asked. "No," she replied, fingers flying over the keys as if afraid her thoughts might vanish. "They have insider knowledge, and not just the what they know, exactly when." Maxwell moved from his desk to stand behind her, his gaze scanning the charts over her shoulder. The warm spice of his cologne mixed faintly with the bitter scent of her cold coffee. The space between them narrowed, not just physically, but in a way that signaled a shared mission. In that moment, staring at the same screen, they weren't CEO and secretary anymore. They were allies, hunting the same enemy. Hours passed as they cross-referenced data. Then Riley stopped cold, an old internal email, attaching confidential strategy documents, addressed to a list labeled Priority Partners. At the bottom was a digital signature. "Bar Chin. Robert Chen," she murmured. Maxwell's brows drew together. Margaret Chen's younger brother. He tried to get a board seat 2 years ago, but was denied for lack of experience. Riley met his eyes. "If he's the leak, that means one of your biggest investors has been protecting him." The room fell silent. Outside, rain began to tap against the glass, steady and unrelenting. Maxwell walked to the liquor cabinet, poured a half glass of whiskey, but didn't drink. He turned back, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Parker, this stays between us. If it gets out, it won't just be our reputations on the line. Hundreds of people could lose their jobs." For the first time, Riley saw past the CEO's cool exterior to the weight he carried, not just for the empire he built, but for the people inside it. By nightfall, the only light left came from their screens and the lamp on his desk. The rest of Wall Street lay silent, broken only by the occasional distant wail of a siren. Stacks of open files surrounded them like a paper fortress. Riley slid a printout toward him. "These are Hartman and Associates' last 6 trades. Each one lines up perfectly with our internal meeting dates." Maxwell read slowly, the lamplight tracing the lines of fatigue and determination on his face. Closing the file, he set it down with finality. "Tomorrow, we start a formal investigation, but it's just you and me, no one else." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "You trust me that much?" His answer was immediate. "You're the only one here with nothing to lose. Accept the truth." The words stopped her cold. In a world where everyone had a price, unconditional trust was the rarest currency of all. Part 4. The Childhood Secret. Late afternoon sunlight barely touched the 30th floor. The meeting had just ended, and Maxwell stepped out to take a call. leaving Riley alone at his desk. Surrounded by a sea of papers, she began gathering the scattered files, but when she bent to tidy the lower drawers, she noticed one was slightly ajar, unlocked. Inside wasn't the neat row of contracts she expected, but a dark wooden box. Riley hesitated, then slowly lifted the lid. A small stack of old newspaper clippings lay inside, the paper yellowed with age. On the top page, a photograph of a glittering high society gala women in sweeping gowns, champagne flutes raised beneath a crystal chandelier. But in the far left corner of the image, a boy of about 10 sat alone, drowning in an oversized suit, holding a glass of water. No one spoke to him. His gaze was fixed on the floor, as though he wished he could vanish among the laughing, oblivious adults. Riley froze. She knew that face. It was Maxwell, not the powerful, unshakable man she knew now, but a lonely child in a world far too big and cold. She sifted through a few more photographs. One showed the velvet glow of a concert hall. In the front row, VIP section, there was an empty seat. Next to it, young Maxwell sat upright in his black suit, eyes drawn not to the stage, but to that vacant chair. Beneath the photo, a printed caption from the paper read, "Mr. and Mrs. Crawford, absent from charity performance due to business obligations." Her throat tightened. In that moment, she understood why Maxwell kept people at arm's length, why trust didn't come easily. When your childhood is marked by empty chairs, on the days you needed to be seen most, your heart learns to build walls so no one can watch it break again. Riley brushed her fingers lightly over the edge of the photo, as if offering presents to the boy who had never had it. The door opened suddenly. She startled, looking up to see Maxwell in the doorway. His eyes landed on the photograph in her hand. He stopped. For a moment, the controlled mask he always wore slipped. "You found it." His voice dropped, low and unreadable. "I didn't mean to," she said quickly. The drawer was open. "I was just curious." He stepped closer, taking the photo from her, his fingertips grazing hers cool. With the faintest tremor, he placed it back in the box, closed the lid, and lowered himself into the chair. They never came, not because they didn't know, but because business was more important. "I learned to sit alone after that." His words were slow, his gaze drifting somewhere far beyond the office walls. For the first time, Riley didn't see the billionaire CEO. She saw the man who still carried the wound of the boy he used to be. She didn't offer platitudes. Instead, she pulled out a chair and sat beside him. "Maxwell, you're not 10 anymore, but that boy is still here. Isn't he?" He gave a faint, humorless smile, no denial. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. "If you'll let me," she said softly, "I'll sit in that empty chair whenever you need me to." Maxwell turned to her, and for the first time, his eyes weren't those of a man making decisions, but of someone wanting to believe that what he'd just heard could be true. He didn't answer, just gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, but Riley understood. It was a quiet promise. In that moment, the distance between them dissolved, not through a confession of love, but through a vow to stay. Part 5. Playing the couple. The late Friday sun spilled golden light across Maxwell's office. Riley was deep in a stack of reports when the door closed softly behind him. His eyes, however, were sharp as a blade. "Are you free tomorrow night?" His tone wasn't that of a man making an invitation. It was an order dressed in velvet. Riley looked up slowly. "Depends. What exactly are you dragging me into?" He set a gold-edged invitation on the desk. "Crawford Foundation, Charity Gala, Art Auction, and Investment Networking." His words were measured. "Hartman will be there, and I need someone to play the part of my woman." One brow arched. "Your woman? Why?" To make him drop his guard, Maxwell said, stepping closer, his gaze locked on hers. And so we can talk to his people without raising suspicion. Riley picked up the invitation, feeling her pulse quicken, not just from the mission, but from the thought of walking into a room at Maxwell's side, every eye on them as if they were a real couple. The next evening, her small apartment looked like a boutique in chaos layers of evening gowns, heels, jewelry boxes, and a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. She finally chose a midnight blue satin gown that hugged her curves, the low back just daring enough without crossing the line. When Maxwell arrived, he stood in the doorway for several seconds, silent. His tuxedo was flawlessly tailored, the silk tie a perfect match to her dress. Extending his hand, he said, "Let's go. Parker, tonight, we're not CEO and secretary. We're inseparable." In the car, as the city lights streamed past the windows, Maxwell handed her a simple diamond necklace. "Wear this. If anyone asks, I gave it to you for our second anniversary." She smirked. "Better hope you're a good actor. I'm not about to be a lousy liar." When he fastened the clasp, his fingers brushed the bare skin at her neck. Riley realized there were going to be many things to hide tonight, but not this. The gala was held at the plaza. The grand ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths gleaming, the air alive with the sound of violins. As they entered, Maxwell's hand rested lightly but firmly at her back, guiding her through the crowd as though this were their stage. Hartman stood in the corner, entertaining a circle of investors. The moment his eyes landed on them, his smile faltered only for a second before sliding back into place. "Maxwell, been too long, and this is..." Maxwell's arm tightened around her waist. "Riley Parker, the reason I still think about home, no matter where I am." Riley matched him, beat for beat, extending her hand with a warm, steady gaze. "Pleasure to meet you. Maxwell's told me so much about you, and about your little games." Hartman's brows lifted slightly, but his smile didn't waver. Hopefully the good ones. Riley knew then she wasn't just playing along for the mission. She was protecting him in the most instinctive way she knew how. During a pause in the auction, the band shifted into a sultry tango. Maxwell leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "We need to stay near him a little longer. Dance with me." Surprised but silent, she nodded. On the dance floor, Maxwell moved with confident precision, each step powerful yet fluid, his arm holding her close enough that she could hear the rhythm of his heartbeat mingling with the music. From the bar, Hartman glanced over more than once. They were supposed to be acting, but when Maxwell twirled her under the lights, his eyes didn't feel like part of the script. When the song ended, he murmured, "Tonight, you're a better actress than I expected, Parker." She replied softly, "For a few minutes out there, I think we both forgot why we came." And in that sliver of space between reality and the performance, neither of them was entirely pretending anymore. Part 6, The Third Player. Monday morning at Crawford Enterprises moved to its usual rhythm. The click of keyboards, the ring of phones. Riley had just stepped out of the elevator when she noticed a man she didn't recognize speaking with the receptionist. Tall, athletic build, chestnut brown hair, cut neat, navy suit, silver tie, and a confident smile that looked like it could open any door. "Riley Parker." His voice was deep, warm. She paused. I'm Andrew Bennett, CEO of Sterling & Co." He extended a gold-embossed business card before she could ask why he was there. "I've heard about you from a few of our mutual investors. We're looking for a new director of strategy. Salary $300,000 a year. Bonuses not included." Riley blinked, caught off guard. An offer like that, delivered in Maxwell Crawford's own lobby, wasn't just a job proposal. It was a quiet declaration of war. She wasn't the kind of woman who chased numbers, but still, it was impossible not to feel a small spark of pride. She also knew there was one person who wouldn't like this scene at all. The elevator doors behind her slid open. Maxwell stepped out. His gaze landed immediately on Andrew close to Riley, leaning in. His jaw tightened, and his steps were measured but deliberate. Bennett. His voice was civil, but colder than January wind. Didn't expect to see you here. And, Riley, what's all the excitement? Andrew's smile didn't waver. Just offering her a position at Sterling. I'm confident she'd shine as our director of strategy. Maxwell glanced at Riley, then back at Andrew. Funny, she's already shining here, and I have no intention of letting anyone take my star. Riley rolled her eyes, fighting a smile. The way he said my star was less like a corporate compliment and more like a personal claim. In that moment, she saw something she'd never expected from Maxwell Crawford, a flash of unpolished, almost awkward jealousy. That afternoon, Andrew texted to invite her for coffee to discuss the offer. The cafe sat on the 15th floor of a glass building, with a sweeping view of the city. Andrew chose a table by the window, the late sun spilling gold across the cappuccino in front of him. Riley, he began, I know you're doing great work at Crawford, but at Sterling, you'd have more authority, a bigger budget, and fewer orders from a boss who likes to control everything. She smiled faintly. You seem to know a lot about Maxwell. Andrew shrugged. The CEO world's a small place, but I think you deserve somewhere your voice won't get drowned out. Before she could respond, she caught a reflection in the window. Familiar shoulders, familiar presence. Maxwell, standing at the counter, ordering, but his attention was clearly on them. The sight sent a strange warmth through her, equal parts amusement and something softer. The man who claimed he didn't care about employees' personal lives was eavesdropping on hers. Maxwell didn't linger in the background. He walked over, setting a latte down in front of her. You forgot your morning coffee, he said, his voice dropping just enough on the word you to make it sound deliberate. Andrew raised a brow. Maxwell, I was just telling Riley about an opportunity. Think you can convince her to stay? Maxwell didn't flinch. She'll stay where she knows she matters, and I'll make sure she knows it. Riley felt a quiet heat in her chest. It wasn't about the paycheck. It wasn't even about the job. In that moment, she realized Maxwell wasn't just fighting to keep a talented employee. He was fighting to keep her. Part 7. The Sting. The 30th floor boardroom of Crawford Enterprises was unnervingly quiet. The glass doors were shut, blinds drawn, and the only light came from the glow of a massive screen casting shadows across Riley and Maxwell's faces. Riley clicked open her laptop, her voice calm but edged with purpose. We're going to create a set of financial documents believable enough to pass, but with one figure deliberately off, something only someone inside would know. Maxwell leaned forward, resting his chin on one hand, his eyes locked on the screen. And you plan to bait them? She nodded. Yes, I'll send it to a very select group, including Robert Chen. If it ends up in Hartman's hands, we'll know exactly who leaked it. The air felt heavier. Maxwell stepped closer, lowering his voice. Be careful. Parker, Robert's not just a leak. He's dangerous. There was something in his gaze she hadn't seen before. Not the cool scrutiny of a CEO toward an employee, but the quiet weight of a man who knew he was putting someone important in harm's way. 3 days later, the bait was set. The accidental email went out to the hand-picked list. Riley even left a printed copy on a side table in a smaller conference room, just enough temptation for someone nosy to take a look. That night, Maxwell and Riley sat in the security monitoring room, eyes fixed on the grainy glow of the surveillance feed. At 1, King Xia, a name. Robert appeared. He moved fast, slipping into the conference room, pulling on thin gloves, and snapping photos of every page. Maxwell's grip tightened on the armrest. Now, two plainclothes FBI agents emerged from the shadows, moving in without a sound. The click of handcuffs echoed faintly in the stillness. Robert smirked. "You have no idea who you're up against." Riley watched from behind the glass, saying nothing, just tracking every step as he was escorted out. There was satisfaction in seeing him caught, but also a chill. She knew they hadn't just protected the company. They'd pulled a knife away from Maxwell's back before it could strike. When the agents were gone, the office was hushed again. A single desk lamp cast warm light over the polished table. Maxwell leaned against the edge, his shoulders visibly lighter after months of tension. "You did better than I expected," he said. Slower, softer than usual. Riley smiled. "I just did my job." He crossed the space between them, stopping close enough that she could hear her own heartbeat. "No, Parker, you didn't just work. You put yourself in danger." "For me," she started to deflect with a joke, but he didn't give her the chance. His eyes held hers. "I need you." The words landed like a quiet tremor, shifting the ground between them. Riley's chest tightened, not with fear, but with the weight of knowing this man rarely, almost never, admitted to needing anyone. For the first time, Maxwell wasn't the untouchable CEO. He was just a man showing her the most unguarded part of himself. Later, they walked together toward the parking garage. The night air was sharp, but Riley felt warm. Maxwell's hands were in his pockets, his stride casual, yet his shoulder tilted just enough toward her to feel like a shield. "At the corner," he said quietly, "tonight was just the beginning. Hartman's not done, but next time, I won't let you be on the front line alone." She glanced up at him with a small smile. "Maybe I don't need you to protect me, Maxwell, but I won't say no." They stopped beside her car, the amber streetlight casting their shadows across the pavement. Neither spoke, but both knew something had changed. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't catching the traitor. It's finding the one person who will stand beside you, no matter what's coming. Part 8. The Refusal. The glass tower of Collins Investment stood like a giant crystal in the heart of the financial district, its surface catching the morning sun. Riley stepped into the lobby with a cappuccino in hand, feeling the sharp, curated chill of the place, so different from the warm, chaotic hum of Crawford Enterprises. Andrew Bennett was already waiting in the 42nd floor conference room. He stood beside a long glass table, the skyline stretching out behind him like a painted backdrop. "Riley," he greeted with a confident smile. "I'll get straight to it. $300,000 a year, plus bonuses and stock options. Your own office, full control over strategic projects, no one breathing down your neck or telling you what to do." He slid a sleek folder across the table, the gold-embossed letters spelling her name on the printed contract. Riley flipped through it, her expression steady. But inside, her heart still echoed with the words Maxwell had said the night before. "I need you." This was the kind of offer people dreamed about. But for her, it wasn't the dream she wanted. Andrew leaned forward. "You're smart, ambitious. Crawford's a stepping stone. Here, you can fly." Riley gave a faint smile. "You know, when I first walked into Crawford, I thought it would be just a job too. But then..." She paused. Flashes of late nights in the security room with Maxwell, shared breakfasts in the company kitchen, and battles fought side by side in boardrooms playing through her mind. Then I realized, I don't just work there, I belong there, and some things money can't buy. Andrew's brow lifted slightly. "You're talking about Maxwell? Aren't you?" She didn't answer directly, just smiled. A mix of pride and softness. I'm talking about the values I choose to keep. In that moment, Riley placed her heart on the scales and didn't choose the bigger number. She chose the place that made her feel she mattered. She stood, closing the folder with a quiet click that seemed to echo in the room. Andrew, I'm grateful for the offer, but where I belong is Crawford, and I'm not leaving. Not now. Andrew leaned back in his chair, studying her. I suppose Maxwell must be something special to keep you. Riley's gaze didn't waver. He's not keeping me. I'm choosing to stay. She walked out into the deep blue carpeted hallway, each step lighter, as if she'd just set down a weight. Outside, sunlight bounced off the glass facade. A freedom no $300 zero contract could buy. Not every departure is a loss, and not every decision to stay is about safety. Sometimes, staying is a declaration of love and loyalty. That afternoon, Riley returned to Crawford Enterprises. Maxwell was mid-meeting with the board, but when he saw her through the glass wall, he called for a break. So, did Collins throw out a number big enough to tempt you? He asked, his tone a blend of curiosity and forced nonchalance. She shrugged. Big enough for most people to take, but not for me. Something in Maxwell's expression shifted, as if he'd just heard something he hadn't dared hope for. Why not? Riley met his gaze, unwavering. Because where I belong is here. He didn't answer right away, but then he smiled a small, rare smile that felt like the dropping of a shield. Sometimes, the simplest words carry more weight than the most elaborate confession. Part 9. A new culture. From the very first step onto the 27th floor, something felt different. The faint scent of fresh paint from the new wellness corner, mixed with the cool hint of mint from the diffusers, like a quiet greeting. A polished acrylic sign in front of the kitchen said more than 100 corporate memos. Daily, complimentary breakfast, oatmeal, fresh fruit, on-site roasted coffee. Please enjoy. Beside it hung a bright poster. Yoga every Wednesday at 12. Thirta, mindfulness, breathing class. And on Fridays, stretch and reset before the weekend. From the mezzanine landing, Maxwell stood looking over the floor, a thin folder tucked under his arm. He'd traded his black suit for a light blue shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow. His father's worn wristwatch, glinting in the light, a watch Riley had never seen him wear to work. Next to him, Riley scanned the checklist on her iPad. Full healthcare restored, commuter stipends, healthy lunch program, flexible hours, mentorship program, emergency relief fund. Each line felt like a brick, rebuilding a foundation that had once been shaken. You ready? Maxwell asked quietly. Riley nodded. You start. I'll take it from there. The main conference room, filled with over 100 employees. Maxwell stepped to the front, breathing in deeply before speaking in a tone none of them had heard before. Calm, unhurried, human. These last 3 months, we've been through a shock. I've made some right decisions and some wrong ones. He paused, eyes meeting familiar faces. Today, I want to make the wrong ones right. Not with an apology, but with a new system. On the screen, the list appeared. No fanfare, no corporate polish, just words, but they seemed to beat with a pulse. Full health insurance restored, plus dental and vision, commuter stipend, $200, $300 month depending on location, lunch budget, $42 per person day, healthy menu priority, flexible hours, start between 7:30 and 00 a.m. Leave between 4:00 and 0 p.m. 1 remote day per week. Wellness, yoga, meditation, anonymous counseling, nap pods, mentorship program. Every new hire paired with a mentor, two-way feedback, emergency fund, up to $2 500 for medical or family crises. The quiet murmurs in the room turned into a heavy stillness, then a slow, hesitant ripple of applause that grew until it filled the space. In the third row, Maria, the silver-haired janitor, gripped her bag, eyes shining. Maxwell caught her gaze and gave a small nod. Riley stepped forward, her voice warm and steady. These aren't favors. They're what we deserve, and we'll keep them by working better, kinder, with ourselves and with each other. If something doesn't feel right, say it. We'll fix it together. From the back, James from security raised a hand. So, does this mean snacks after 3 p.m.? Are back? Laughter rippled through the room. Maxwell gave one of his rare smiles. They're back, and not just after 3. Limit 2 per person. Riley teased. 3. James bargained. 3. Maxwell agreed, glancing at Riley like they'd just signed a secret treaty. When the applause faded, Maria came to the front, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for giving me my eyes back. The room stilled. She explained, my old insurance didn't cover cataract surgery. Now, I'll be able to see every name when I say good morning. Maxwell closed his eyes for a beat. The ceiling lights blurred, or maybe that was just his vision. The kitchen now boasted a vibrant salad bar, a pot of steaming soup, and baskets of whole grain bread. On the wall, a chalkboard read, "Thank you board. Write down the name of someone you want to thank today." Scrawled in white chalk, Olivia for staying late to fix the layout. Brian for fixing the printer like a hero. Sandra for hugging me when my report got rejected. Maria brushed Riley's arm as she passed. You make the whole building brighter. You know that we do, Riley corrected with a smile. Maxwell appeared with 2 lunch trays, setting one in front of her like it was second nature. Vegetable soup's good today. I've tried it or inspected it. She teased. Both. His slight lean toward her felt different now. Not the posture of a man hiding in a corner office, but someone choosing to be among his people. They watched from their table as marketing roared with laughter over a share your most embarrassing moment game. And IT played a chess match where the loser had to sing at the coffee machine. Olivia breezed past with her camera. Photo for the weekly bulletin. Maxwell froze, but Riley pulled him close, flashing a peace sign. Smile or fake it. Eventually, it becomes real. Click. Olivia grinned. This is the most real you've ever looked in a photo, Mr. Crawford. Maxwell blinked, unfamiliar with being complimented for authenticity. Later, in the mentorship room, Olivia and Maria swapped stories, one about a forgotten dream to paint, the other about a long-lost wish to study photography. We should start a photo and art club, Olivia suggested. Now that benefits her back. It's possible, Maria laughed. Maxwell, leaning in the doorway, smiled quietly. By evening, Riley found a sticky note on her screen. Parker, thanks for being a mentor. To the CEO, the handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, deliberate. 1 week later, at the strategic meeting, the metrics were clear. Productivity up 14%, process errors down 21%, voluntary turnover from 7% to 8%. But at the end of the slides, a new graph appeared. Smile index measured by anonymous surveys. Thank you board entries. And candid smiles in the bulletin. The curve was climbing. This metric doesn't exist on Wall Street, Maxwell said. But it's what keeps a company alive and makes us want to come in every morning, Riley added. Margaret Chen walked in unannounced. I came to tell the board my fund is increasing its stake. What you're building here, that's sustainable growth. The pretty numbers will follow. Too many companies die because every metric looks good except one, the people. When she left, Maxwell leaned back with a quiet exhale. Without you, this wouldn't exist, he told Riley. Without us, she corrected, eyes bright. That evening, Brian shyly handed Maxwell a small box. Boss, we pooled $10 for this. A stapler, one that won't jam. Maxwell opened it to reveal a clunky blue stapler and laughed a full, unguarded laugh that seemed to shake the glass walls. The city glowed beneath them from the rooftop. The Hudson carried a salt-tinged wind. Riley leaned on the railing, hair loose in the breeze. Maxwell draped a light jacket over her shoulders. It'll get cold, he said. Thanks, she smiled, watching everyone today. It felt like seeing a different company and a different you. I used to think leadership meant control, he admitted. Turns out, it means care and knowing when to say, I need you, she teased. He looked at her, eyes warmer than the city lights. I'm going to need you for a long time. Parker, then maybe. Lose the black suit every day. People might be less afraid to tell you they're hurting. He laughed, head tipping back. A new habit since she'd arrived. Deal. And you never stop writing those little notes. I'll write them for the rest of my life, she promised softly. Down below, Maria folded her new uniform beside the insurance-approved surgery date on her desk. Brian sent his mentor check-in email. This week, I learned to breathe before hitting reply all. The thank you board was so full, someone had strung up an extra line of clips. And on the rooftop, they stood in a silence only two people truly at home can share. Riley pulled out a small note, scrawled in blue ink. Thank you for learning to smile back at the world. She slipped it into the inside of Maxwell's jacket, right over his heart. He touched it like it was a record he'd just set, not on the stock exchange, but on the quiet graph of the human heart. Part 10. The Proposal. Leonarden wasn't just a restaurant. It was a symphony of light, flavor, and perfectly placed pauses. Chandeliers hung like drops of golden honey, glimmering across crystal glasses outside. The Hudson shimmered under the moonlight, while a grand piano in the corner played an old ballad that seemed to slow time itself. Maxwell arrived early, midnight blue suit, matching tie, softer silk than his usual armor. On table 14, with the widest view of the river, sat a small velvet box between two wine glasses. He touched it lightly, as if to reassure himself it hadn't vanished. When Riley walked in, hair swept low, deep wine satin dress, hugging just right, her eyes alight with the room's reflection, Maxwell stood, pulling out her chair, with the ease of a man who'd practiced this moment in his head for weeks. I picked this table, he said, voice low. So tonight, it's just us and the river. She smiled, teasing. Sounds romantic. You closing a deal on the river. He only smiled back, pouring the wine, while inside, each passing second counted down to the one moment he'd been preparing for. Between courses, they spoke truths they'd never voiced before. Riley confessed that in her second week at Crawford, she almost quit, overwhelmed by the pressure and his silence, certain she was invisible. Maxwell admitted there were nights he stayed in the office until 3 a.m., not from work, but to avoid going home to an empty place. You know, Riley said, setting her fork down, there were days you felt like a fortress, beautiful, imposing, but sealed shut. And now, he asked, now, you're more like a cathedral, quiet, but open to anyone brave enough to step inside. Maxwell didn't respond right away. He breathed in deeply, as if to hold on to her words. The piano shifted to La Vie en Rose. Maxwell's gaze lingered longer than it needed to. His hand brushed hers, thumb tracing a soft line over her skin. Riley remembered the early days, when being this close to him wound her tight as a bowstring. Now, his touch felt like a blanket pulled around her on a cold night. The change was a story she never expected to live. When dessert arrived, a molten chocolate souffle. Maxwell stood. Riley looked up, surprised. "Where are you?" He came around the table, lowering to one knee. The room stilled. Opening the velvet box, the diamond caught the warm light, flaring like a piece of captured starlight. "Riley Parker," Maxwell began, his voice steady, but threaded with something deeper. "You've taught me that leadership isn't just about giving direction. It's about listening. That a company isn't just balance sheets, it's a heart. And you've shown me that a man doesn't just live on goals. He lives on love." Her breath caught, a hand lifting to her mouth. "For all of that," he continued, "and because I want to spend my life learning from you, loving you, and building chairs that never sit empty. Will you be my partner for life?" The world seemed to pause. She looked at him, not the man who'd walked into her life like a winter storm, but the one now on his knee, offering her the warmest thing he had, his heart. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from shock, but from knowing every battle, every near loss between them had led right here. "Yes," she whispered, then laughed softly through the tears. "Yes, Maxwell Crawford, but—" She drew him to his feet. "Only if you promise me one thing." "Anything?" he said, without hesitation. "You'll never close your heart again. Not to me, not to anyone you love." His eyes locked on hers. "I promise." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been measured not just by size, but by every time their hands had held. The applause rose, warm rather than loud. The pianist shifted into Clair de Lune near the window. Another couple clinked glasses, as if they too had just said yes. Maxwell kissed her hand, and Riley knew this wasn't an ending. It was a semicolon, the start of a new chapter, written by two people who understood the worth of holding on. Outside, the night air wrapped around them. Maxwell draped his coat over her shoulders, his hand steady at her waist as they walked the riverfront. The city lights reflected on the water like a trail of stars. "You know," Maxwell said, "I used to think proposing was about getting the perfect moment right. I was wrong. Perfect is you saying yes, even if nothing before it was perfect." Riley rested her head on his shoulder. "And I used to think I could never fall for someone like you. Turns out, someone like you is exactly who makes me feel like myself." They stopped at a stone pier, water lapping gently. "I love you, Parker," he said. "I know." She smiled softly. "And I love you, Crawford." Their hands tightened together. No CEO and assistant now, no fortress. And the one knocking at its gates. Just two people and a long road ahead. Each step, a new promise. From her bag, Riley pulled a small note. Scrawled, "Thank you for choosing me every day." She slipped it into his coat pocket, right over his heart. He pressed a hand to it, knowing he'd carry her there from now on. Morning sunlight poured through the tall glass of the 42nd floor, wrapping the office in gold. Crawford Enterprises buzzed, but not with tense keystrokes or ringing phones, with laughter. By the window, a fresh nameplate gleamed. Riley Parker, Director of Special Projects and Spilled Coffee Specialist. The parenthesis was Maxwell's doing, in a mischievous font unlike anything else in the building. She'd meant to protest, but every time she looked at it, she smiled. Maxwell appeared, white shirt sleeves rolled. No longer the icebound CEO she'd first met, setting a fresh coffee on her desk. He teased, "Not premium latte this time, but still capable of changing your day." She wrapped her hands around the cup, warmth spreading all the way to her chest. "Thank you, partner." They shared a look. Not boss and employee anymore, but equals, teammates, two people who'd fought, built, and protected something worth keeping. On his way back to his desk, Maxwell paused. "You know, sometimes leadership isn't about controlling people, it's about caring for them." And sometimes, one cup of coffee can change your life. Riley glanced around the office, the smiling faces, the animated conversations, the confident eyes, and knew this was where she belonged. Not just for Maxwell, but for every person here who now felt like family. Have you ever witnessed a small moment that changed your life? Share it in the comments below. And when this story ends, give it a score from 0. At a siga squirrel from 2 to 10. Because sometimes the smallest things leave the biggest mark.